China and the USA are at it again. And this time, they're fighting over the sudden appearance of a balloon. US-China relations haven't always been the best, but thanks to the recent incident involving a Chinese balloon found over US waters, the potential for conflict between two of the world's most powerful nations is much greater. While it's unclear what the motives behind China's actions were, the incident marks a significant escalation in the level of tension between the two countries. And trust us, things were bad enough before the balloon floated in. So, let's explore how the Chinese balloon incident will impact the already tense relations between the countries, examine the wider context of US-China relations, and consider possible solutions for avoiding a dangerous escalation of tensions between the two superpowers. In February 2022, there was a bit of a commotion over a Chinese balloon that was found floating over US waters in the Pacific Ocean. This wasn't just any old balloon, mind you. It was decked out with fancy sensors and other spy equipment, supposedly designed to gather intel on the US military. As you can imagine, this discovery didn't exactly go down well with the Americans. They quickly sprang into action, sending out ships and planes to track the balloon's movements and finally shoot it out of the sky. Eventually, the balloon was recovered and its remains were sent to Quantico for analysis. Yes, the FBI has gotten involved too. While it's hard to say exactly what China's intentions were with the balloon, it certainly didn't sit well with US officials. They're sure the balloon was sent to spy on them. But the Chinese have maintained that the accusation isn't true and that it was nothing more than a civilian that was blown off course. This incident has added even more fuel to the already burning fire of tensions between the two nations. The world is left wondering if this could be the spark that sets off a full-blown conflict. The US and China relations have been pretty fragile to begin with. They've had arguments over trade, human rights, and even ownership in the South China Sea. As you've probably guessed, this spy balloon isn't going to make matters any better, but worsen them a whole lot more. So the one thing we do know is that this incident will put a lot more strain on the relations between the two countries. The US has expressed its dissatisfaction with the way China handled a number of matters, such as the treatment of the people in Uyghur. To come across a device that had the equipment to collect intel could have been bad enough to set the country off. Thankfully, President Biden chose to let this mistake go and not escalate the matter any further. But that doesn't mean things are better. The fact of the matter is, the US and China don't really trust each other or their motives. This incident will only add fuel to the fire. Let's not forget that they're already pretty suspicious of each other, thinking the other side is spying on them or stealing their secrets. Fighting this balloon over US waters is going to make the superpower even more paranoid, which will only make it harder for the two nations to agree on global matters. What's more is that this incident might also have an impact on politics in the US. With the presidential election just around the corner, many politicians have probably already started to work out how to get citizens to vote for them. This balloon incident may be just what they need. They could use it to make them look good and act like they'll be really tough on China. If such sentiments start to make the news, it could lead to even more hardline policies against China. Over in China, this incident could make people even more anti-American. The Chinese government and its people are very proud of their country, and the US's threats won't be something that they'll just take sitting down. As we stated earlier, the Chinese balloon is just part of a much larger story. The US and China have had a hard time agreeing upon many topics, mainly because they have very different ideas about what the world should actually look like. So they have competing views on many matters when it comes to things like trade, security, and human rights. Trade is one of the biggest issues between the two countries. The US hasn't held back on its accusations. They've accused China of doing unfair things like manipulating its currency and even stealing ideas from US companies. And to counter these problems, the US has instituted tariffs and other trade restrictions on Chinese goods. Of course, China's economy was greatly impacted. Another source of tension for the two nations is security. You see, China's been expanding its military, but has also resorted to using pretty aggressive actions in the South China Sea. They've actually built man-made islands in the region and claim that the waters around them belong to their country now. Not to mention, the US has also accused China of cyber espionage to steal their secrets. Human rights are another problem worsening US-China relations. The US hasn't criticized the way China has treated certain groups of people like the Uyghur Muslims. Plus, they're worried about China limiting democracy and people's freedom in Hong Kong. All of these things and more have led to a sense of distrust and tension between the US and China. Both countries have been acting more and more aggressively, which could lead to a major conflict. So what can be done to avoid any conflict between the US and China? One possible solution, and frankly the easiest one out there, is to increase dialogue between the two nations. By improving channels of communication, both sides can understand each other's perspectives and concerns. Plus, this also helps to avoid misunderstandings and miscalculations. Sadly, achieving this goal is easier said than done. The US and China have very different views on many important issues. And what's more is that they've shown very little willingness to compromise or make concessions to maintain peace. Not to mention, the current political climate in both countries is highly polarized. It only makes it hard to find common ground. Another solution could be to invest more heavily in international organizations and agreements to promote peace and stability. The United Nations, for instance, could play a much larger role in mediating disputes between these two major powers. They could also establish standards for behavior in the international system. International agreements, such as the Paris Climate Accord, have shown that multilateralism can be effective in addressing complex global issues. Then again, these international organizations and agreements are only effective provided that the US and China are willing to engage with them. So, what's a third possible solution? Politicians could focus on building areas of cooperation between the US and China. Look at it this way: both countries have a shared interest in combating climate change. They could work together to reduce carbon emissions and even begin migrating to renewable energy sources. By focusing on areas of mutual interest and cooperation, the US and China could build trust. But this approach would require significant political will and cooperation on both sides. And that seems almost impossible given the current state of US-China relations. The incident with the Chinese balloon over US waters reminded everyone just how difficult the relationship between the US and China is. While Biden may have stepped in and handled the matter calmly, he did threaten action upon China if they were to threaten them again. While the matter was handled deftly, the very obvious threat proves just how delicate the situation currently is. But, like it or not, diplomacy and engagement are more important than confrontation. Yes, China's balloon was where it shouldn't have been, but fighting over a digressing meteorological airship is not something to escalate matters over. But it also should be said that China's hush-hush attitude when it comes to balloons shows how dangerous they can be. This aircraft made its way over U.S. waters and proved that it could infiltrate the country if necessary. Both sides need to share information and become more transparent with one another about their goals. Yes, the US and China have different concerns and ideas, but they also have shared interests like climate change and global health. They need to find common ground and work together to solve problems. The Chinese balloon incident over U.S. waters should be seen as a wake-up call for the U.S. and China and their diplomatic relationship. Although the incident may not have had a significant impact, it does highlight how important it is to prioritize diplomacy, engagement, and collaboration. Hopefully, this incident will serve as a reminder to both nations that they need to work together in a more positive, constructive manner to manage their relationship effectively. Do you think tensions between the US and China could escalate? Let us know what you think in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.